And we're live to review Justice Part 2 with his Jeffness, Jeff Miller. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going okay.
All right, so Justice Part 2, the teleplay is by David Simon, the author of Homicide: A Year on the Killing Streets. The story by Tom Fontana and Henry Brommel, by Peter Medak. And aired February 23rd, 1996. Lewis arrives at Jake Radzinski's house to see how he's dealing with his father's death and the recent not guilty verdict in the Damon trial. Father's dog is still barking constantly. Jake is not taking the recent turn of events well, rarely speaking, drinking, and spending much of his time with his father's ex-partner. Lewis tells Jake that he has to put this all behind him, predicting that the criminal Damon will be back in police custody sooner or later on other charges. Back at the precinct, Pemberton is handing out sandwiches he picked up on a lunch run. Bayless is upset when Pemberton forgets his grilled cheese sandwich. He's seen bringing pastries into the precinct for everyone but Pemberton to enjoy. This takes this a little too far. Pemberton decides to bombard his partner with grilled cheese sandwiches, stuffing them into every nook and cranny of Bayless's desk. Arrive at the scene of a murder. When the body is turned face up, the detectives realize the good and bad news. Damon. The detectives are glad this scum is off the street, but Kellerman mentions this may not bode so well for Jake Radzinski, who may have sought out revenge on his father's life. Kellerman to investigate Officer Jake Radzinski, much to the disappointment of Lewis, who searches for other possibilities, but to no avail. Discovered that the weapon of choice in the Damon murder was a Derringer, G has an idea and tells the detectives to look into Edgar Radzinski's records. G mentions that it was common in the late 1960s for officers to be armed to the teeth and carry two weapons. Finds out that his partner, Pez McCadden, has been called in for questioning. He loses it and shoots his father's dog, Mark. When McCadden is interviewed in the box, it doesn't take long for him to give up his partner, Jake. Kellerman is disgusted by this. The episode ends with the detective sharing a drink at the waterfront, with G telling a story about back in the day. So that's the recap. And we'll see what Mr. Morris has to say. Nothing new is talked about in Justice Part 2. Indeed, stripped to its essentials, the episode is a bit of a cliche. After the father of a detective is killed and his murderer acquitted, the cop killer is himself dispatched, as it turns out, by the victim's son. What makes the show work, as is usually the case, is the detail of the characters. The center of the story comes down to a contrast between the old school police, such as Jake Radzinski, and the new order represented by Mike Kellerman. After Jake's arrest, Giardello recalls an incident of the old days in which the police meted out vigilante-style justice on those other detective who did not share those feelings. It is not a particularly pretty story. G seems ambivalent about it, but is it any worse than today when the police are burdened by rules that favor the cop killer? Had Jake killed Kenny Damon 20 years earlier, no one would have raised an objection. Does this make actions wrong? Depends on who you ask. G, as you recall in Black and Blue, took great offense to the idea of investigating cops as if they were common criminals. However, he seems all right with having Kellerman's partner and keeping Lewis out of the loop. Meldrick doesn't like the idea of investigating Jake and isn't above using his discretion to let killers walk, but fundamentally he believes in doing the right thing. And of course, Pemberton, murder is a murder no matter who the victim or the killer is. At the center of the episode is Kellerman, out of state when the investigation into Edgar Radzinski's murder took place and with no relationship with Jake in any way. He still doesn't relish the idea of going after other cops. He knows that he could probably let Jake walk after a preliminary investigation, but he is too good a cop to just let this slide. He doesn't feel good about doing it. It makes him feel like taking a shower, but he is still young enough to believe it should be done. Of particular note is Kellerman's reaction when Jake's partner agrees to testify against him. Though this is exactly what he wanted to have happen, he is still angry that the man would give up his partner so easily. Kellerman believes deeply in loyalty to one's fellow officers, which is why, spoiler. More on that later. Strangely enough, Jake Rudzinski himself is much less of a figure than he was in the previous episode. At first, he can't to Damon's acquittal. Then he seems a little too close to normal when he comes back to work. His anger seems to reach the point of fury when, after weeks of taking care of his father's dog, who has not stopped barking since his master was killed, he gets really pissed and shoots him. Strangely, he seems to reach a catharsis after this. When Meldrick and Munch come to arrest him, he doesn't even bother to put up resistance. In his own way, he has reached his kind of peace. Bayless and Pendleton are in the middle of this. They're almost completely absent from the investigation. Rather, they are involved in a private and rather amusing war, which begins when Frank gets lunch for the squad but neglects to buy Tim a grilled cheese sandwich. Tim bristles at what he thinks is a personal snub and retaliates by theatrically bringing pastries to everyone but Frank. His attitude gets more. Frank brings a peace offering, dozens of grilled cheese sandwiches scattered liberally throughout Tim's workspace. Perhaps the funniest thing is watching Frank's reaction, which is a complete and absolute blank. No smile, no wink, he just smokes a cigarette. All things considered, this is an impressive return by David Simon to Homicide as a staff writer. He plays attention details that others would overlook, including general lack of knowledge of ballistics on the part of police who work in check fraud, and his reference to the old school police and the new breed. Justice Part 2 is far from a perfect episode. It has trouble getting past most of the cliches that seem more characteristic of NYPD Blue, but in a fitting first episode. Plus, it shows that the series can function without its central figures, which doesn't happen much more often. My score, 8.25. Well, that's what he said. What do you think, Ben?
I think it's about a 7. I mean, I'm tempted to give it a 0 just because I wanted him to get off. I wanted it to be like arranged that he didn't get in trouble. The cop played by Bruce Campbell. I would have for the scene where Pendleton, where Bayless says apology accepted. I would have had Frank say to himself, "He thinks I apologized. Damn."
Yeah, well, I briefly discussed that with Morgan, actually, and I said, if the roles had been reversed, Bayless wouldn't have spent that much money on grilled cheese sandwiches because he wouldn't have wanted to waste the money. But
yeah,
with Pendleton, it was more about making the impact of having all of the bags of sandwiches instead.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and about
that was actually my favorite.
And it was that quote from sorry to talk over you. There was that quote from Kellerman. It's bad enough that you did the murder, but for you to sit here and give your partner up in a heartbeat, I don't like you from either end. Yeah, and the stuff with the grilled cheeses, when he found them in the drawers and stuff, that was genuinely funny to me. And then I thought that the G scene at the end was very good. I had to rewind it once or twice to get all the details of what was going on. What else? Bruce Campbell was good as the son, Jake. I'll go through some slides that I took. We got and I liked the little bit of camera direction when he went through the door, and then as he twists, so he's turning around clockwise. Then the camera, anti-clockwise, and then this twists as well, So it's sort of like matches the movement where he's going round, and then the camera goes round there just as he comes in, and then it was a nice effect. And then we got. Do any of these three names stick out to you, Jeff? No. Any of them?
Well, Harley McBride is Dyer, the medical examiner,
Right.
and Richard Belzer's real-life wife, and a former Playboy model, in case you didn't already know that.
Oh, which one's that? Frederica Caston.
No, Harley McBride.
Oh. Oh, right. Sorry. Right. Medical. Okay. Yeah, I thought that was good, so I put that in. And then it said David Simon's return to the show. Yes, but is this the first thing is written though?
No, there was one previous episode in the second season that he co-wrote.
Okay. With these like stickers, one time I've seen Crime Solvers, and then another time I've seen like Crime Stoppers or something.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's how they change their names, because maybe like old stickers hanging around. And why do they need to see this? You know, they're the police.
It's probably more just that it's the refrigerator and they get stuff and they stick it there because it was their location. You know, it's what happens. It's in work, and there's stuff that's, you know, related with our company, you know, stuff stuck to the bulletin board because it happened to be there.
Right.
So same kind of deal.
Right.
I chart up there, you know, it's a magnet, so it gets put on the refrigerator. Stuck a newspaper headline up there too. I can't read what it says though.
Oh.
Yeah, some kind of comics up there too, probably cop related in some way. I can't read that either, so I don't know what it says.
No. I mean, it's not going to be sharp enough. No, because you know, it's a small file. So maybe someone might be able to see it on the DVD. I mean, maybe it could be released on Blu-ray. I mean, they shot it on film, I think, so it's possible they could release it on Blu-ray. I mean, you got the clue in this scene that something was up by the way he reacted. Yeah, that he was hiding something.
Yeah, I think that what Kellerman was doing in taking him to lunch instead of interviewing him in the boxes, he was trying to get him to relax and not like script. He was thinking, well, maybe if I can get him kind of more off the cuff, I can, you know, get the real thing.
Yep.
You know, he kind of notices that they still seemed rehearsed with their story.
And that's Ruby Wax. As I've mentioned before, my favorite interviewer, Ruby Wax. That's what her approach was, to try to gain rapport with the person she was interviewing with, get them to open up, rather than, you know, those silly interviewers that like just go hardball and like try to play it tough with the guest, and then they'll just make them close up.
Yeah, because I think Kellerman probably figured, well, he's expecting me to have him in the box. He's probably kind of geared himself up for how he's going to respond there. And so if I take him to lunch, you know, have a different mentality while I'm talking to him.
Yeah, and this is the bit with that quote from Callum about I don't like you from either end, and then there's the bit.
Another good scene in the office with G and Lewis that was amusing when Lewis is trying to complain about Howard telling him they can't share information. G's doing his performance evaluation.
Yeah.
Starts reading the part about takes direction or takes
Yeah.
supervision well or whatever. Maybe I need to erase that. I think I need an eraser. Do you have an eraser?
Yeah. Right. I was just thinking about whether that should be the thumbnail.
Yeah, I thought about that too, but I think it's not very obvious what that is. Like the Pimpleton, shot is good. The only thing is it's funny to use that when it doesn't have much to do with most of the episode, but anyway.
Well, sometimes how I choose a thumbnail, and either it's a good-looking woman,
Well, right.
or
Yeah.
or it's something quirky, or a piece of technology.
Yeah, I mean, of the things they showed, then probably either the one with Bruce Campbell on the phone or the Pimpleton one are probably the best pictures.
What else about this episode? Yeah, I do like G's stories. More of that would be good.
Yep.
I mean, I suppose it's testament to the writer that the fact that I wanted Jake to get off so much. So that's testament to the writer, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, you could say that in that often doesn't get away with it. Like more often than not, but on the other hand, it would have made for a more interesting story. Obviously, been some on both sides of that already presented on the show, like Gordon Pratt got away with it.
How about how about Thingy, where they actually got him to wash the hands with some sort of bleachy type stuff?
Yeah, you had that. So we've seen both sides of it. There was the other cop that was like the sergeant that had been involved with Howard that shot the guy in the back. So sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And there'll be more examples before the show ends. But I somewhat agree with what and that on paper there's not much to the plot. The main strengths of the episode are in the details of the characters and and I think that's what he points out that David Simon brings in terms of focus on those things that are more like this is how cops act between them important than necessarily particularly innovative. So that's the strength of this episode is that the acting and everything is good, everybody is believable, all the interactions are good, the dialogue's good. Just exciting. So I would agree with you. I'd give it about a 7. It's good television. It's not among the best Homicide episodes, but it's decent. Some amusing exchanges, like my favorite part being the grilled cheese sandwiches also. And yeah, I think Bruce Campbell was good. It's sort of descent into whatever you want to call it, combination of grief or guilt or whatever it was he's going through.
Yeah, the dog was annoying. Bang bang.
Yeah.
I've not got much else to say.
Then
I'm out.
join us next time for Stakeout.
Bye, folks.
Bye.